Electricity provision across the African continent is in its infancy. Certainly we've seen Eskom do some very impressive rollouts across South Africa, but the continent still has plenty of growth opportunity. A long way to go before every household has electricity. But the total number of homes with electricity in Africa expected to rise to more than 82 million by 2020. And it means a large number of these households will have prepaid electricity meters. This is the Moneymakers. I'm Bruce Whitfield. I'm joined by Consolidated Infrastructure Group's Chief Investment Officer, D.C. Moore, to discuss an 850 million rand purchase of an old Durban business called Conlog. Massively controversial in the olden days of 10, 15 years ago. Joe Modise was once the chairman and they used to do all sorts of things. But today, the Durban-based manufacturer of primarily prepaid electricity meters. I mean, I don't expect you to know the history of this, DC, but I mean, 15 years ago, investors were running scared of Conlog. What makes you brave enough to take it on now?
Well, the way we answer that question is 15 years ago, CIG would be worth zero because we weren't around. The way we look at this company is that post sort of the 2000-2001 days, it was bought by Schneider Electric, global French.
It's a French-based manufacturer of electrical components.
Yes, so they do energy management meters. They'll do some distribution, hardware, etc. Long presence and reputation across the continent. Felt very confident in purchasing from a multinational who's been running the business for a number of years, has had the chance to clean it up, change the strategy. They've gone from car immobilizers under the Modise days to prepaid meters. Completely changed the strategy and completely brought in new management. And it's gone from a South African-based business to a business that sells 70% of its product outside of South Africa.
So what opportunity are you seeing that the French aren't seeing? Because the French are disinvesting from the business. You are investing in the business up to 850 million rand because there's a big potential clawback in this deal.
Yes.
It's not necessarily, you're not necessarily going to pay back all the money, to coin a South African phrase. When we look at the business opportunity that you see, what is it?
For us, it's obvious. So let me just touch base on the Schneider part for a second. They are looking to disinvest from businesses that are not core to their strategy. And throughout our conversations, it was very obvious that there were no synergies between their business and the Schneider business the way they would have foreseen it. For us, we think it's a great opportunity to, expand into the distribution value chain in power, which we don't have a real presence in.
And in English, the distribution value chain is meters.
Well, meters, the lower voltage component of the value chain. So you have three basic parts. Generation, big power plants. Transmission, the overhead lines and everything you see, larger voltage, higher voltage. And then you have distribution, which is the lower voltage, sometimes medium voltage, going straight into your home.
Right.
So the meters go straight into your home. That component is, I think with our transmission exposure, which is what we do at CIG normally through Conco is transmission, is say 20% of the value chain. We have some generation exposure, but not the complete wrap. And then when you come to distribution, that's another 20 to 30% of the value chain. We're a B2B company, and we had to find a way to get the distribution, which is more of a B2C.
Right.
So it gives us huge exposure to something that we were missing. Two, it gives us a different revenue profile from the rest of the companies that we have in the business.
Who are your customers here? Are these local authorities, not only in South Africa, but there'll be local authorities throughout the continent?
Yeah, so you would split, you'd have the local authorities like the normal utilities.
So City of Johannesburg, for example, has got City Power. City Power would be your client.
That would be a client. And similar to right now, as Conco, as our sort of key subsidiary, City Power is also a client, but there's no overlap in the business. So now you take share of wallet for City Power spend, and it goes up for us as CIG as a group.
Now, we look at the politics of electricity meters. If you look at Eskom's results every single year, there's a big line item that says this is what, for example, Soweto owes us, and it's in the billions of rand, and there have been write-offs in the past. Eskom, very keen to get prepaid electricity meters into communities. Many communities, not all that keen on having them, because it actually means paying for power. How do you get around the politics of meters?
Well, there's also benefits for the end consumer when it comes to this. For those who do actually rightfully pay for power, when you have somebody that taps into the network after your home, all of a sudden you're paying not only for your power, but for others' power. Also, it allows those who are more cost conscious to monitor and manage their spend on electricity. If you see that you have credits that are going down by using, let's say, the washing machine during the day versus the nighttime, you could actually manage that usage if you actually are able to track your power usage vis-a-vis a meter.
No, I mean, that's the ultimate sale on meters. It puts the power in the consumer's hand in the same way as prepaid cell phone usage and everything else. And there is the market upon which to base the sale of the meters, because people are very used to prepaid cell phones. Many people prefer the prepaid method of cell phone usage versus the contract. It's not as if your market is uncertain about what's on offer.
Exactly, and another benefit here is whereas in prepaid cell phone, you typically pay a premium for not having a contract.
Yep.
Here, you're not paying a premium in most cases that we've seen during our diligence.
Well, it all does depend, of course, on the local authority and what it chooses its consumers.
Yes.
Is Eskom a client?
Eskom is a client.
Because it's got its own distribution network and its own clients, its direct clients, and of course then most of us are on some local authority's power grid. Where then is the big market? How much competition is there in this prepaid meter space? I'm thinking of my own prepaid meter. It doesn't have a Conlog logo on it. I don't know whose logo it has, but it's not a Conlog one.
Well, we're going to have to get you a new one. Essentially, you split it up into three sectors when you look at meters in general across the continent and across the world. In one instance, on the lower end, you have the very basic conventional meter that's been around for years and years and years. There, your competition would be the Chinese or the Indians. Very cheap, low-cost providers of very basic meters. They don't provide analytics. You might get pre and postpaid, but that's it. On the very high end, you have like the Lamborghini of meters, right? So you have Landis and Gear, in some instances Itron, the smart meter. The usage for really smart meters, mostly in the US, Western Europe, et cetera, where there's all types of bells and whistles. You could turn off your geyser with your cell phone type of thing. Where Conlog, and we think, this is the real buy for us, is it sits right in the middle of that, where they call it smart enough or smart thin. Essentially, you give applications to the user, the very end user, that they can use. So they'll look at the meter, they can monitor their usage and everything else, but you're not going overly complicated. And then also you give the ability to the utility to manage revenues, control costs, secure revenues in a way that you won't get from a basic meter. And this is where Conlog plays. Their competition there might be an Itron, an LCWD based out of Egypt. But as you can see with sort of their sales footprint across the continent, they've done very well across a number of markets.
Now, not many people are brave enough to manufacture in South Africa. You're buying a South African manufacturing base when you could simply have bought something Chinese or Indian.
Yeah, for us, not only are we trying to do great business across the continent, but there's things we're trying to do across the continent which align both our strategy, our growth strategy, but also with what we think our end clients, a lot of times government and the populace across the continent. And we believe in South African manufacturing. We don't run away from it. We did our diligence, obviously. We went to the factory, we met management, we met some of the workers in the factory itself. And we felt very good about not only the culture there in terms of product, services, quality, but the buy-in that you had from top to bottom, from management to those working on the factory floor, belief in Conlog and what it could deliver. We also looked at comparisons between Conlog's meters and others that were across the market. We asked, we have a pretty extensive network across the continent in utilities and municipalities. We leveraged that network to ask about the performance and the quality of Conlog meters and their responsiveness, and we heard nothing but good things.
What is your growth opportunity here? Because here we've got Conlog, which is, as you said, I think 70% of its revenues are outside of South Africa right now, primarily on the African continent. That's already an established market. Where's the growth?
So for us, if you look at it, just going with the numbers that you said earlier, so we're going to go from about 64 million to 82 million electrified households across the continent, a 5% growth. Meters will go from about 25 to 37% of that. If you do the numbers, the backwards math, you get to a 17, 18% growth rate for meters in real terms, not normal terms, real terms. So we think for this company, we could get 15 to 20% growth under CIG management. With the appropriate risk management. Do you keep the base in Durban, or do you say, but Durban's the first of the manufacturing facilities, we can manufacture elsewhere? Or do you just use this as a distribution point? Oh, so we would definitely keep the lead manufacturing in Durban. What we do see is where other countries across the continent want more localization. We could see light assembly across other parts of the continent, or a regional light assembly hub. So we have looked at that. We have started talking about it, but it's something we have to explore with Conlog's management before we execute on it.
And again, the politics of electricity distribution, we understand the South African market being here in Johannesburg. We understand the shortages. We understand the pricing issues. NERSA, the energy regulator, just this week has put a hold on big price increases for Eskom. There's big pressure to be had here. So there's going to be an interesting shift in the way consumers consume their power. What about the rest of the continent? What sort of opportunities are there?
Well, depends on the country almost.
Yeah.
So
pick a country.
So let's say Nigeria. They've privatized.
It's one everyone picks.
Yes. Yeah, everybody loves Nigeria, even though it's sometimes painful, right? They have privatized generation. They've privatized distribution. Transmission remains a public sector entity, but no matter how much power is produced in generation, if you can't get it across transmission, it's not getting to distribution. So now you have commercial pressures on two ends of the value chain, and then a transmission company that, for many reasons, has been slow to roll out enough bandwidth, enough grid, enough reliability. Fully on the distribution side, when you have a commercial entity acting, their biggest thing right now, for them to get loans and everything else, they need to secure revenues, right? If you go to a bank and you can't say you've secured revenues and you have 50% losses, which they were in Nigeria, you can't get a loan, right? You can't get funding. So Nigeria, we see that as a huge opportunity. And matter of fact, Conlog's already been there. If you go to a KPLC in Kenya, they've been rolling out prepaid meters for quite a while. You go to Zambia, they've been rolling out prepaid meters for quite a while. I think
so the culture is in place, the markets are in place. It's simply about providing the service.
Providing good service, providing, and it's not just simply delivering a meter, in our view. You know, you roll out these meters, you have to have the connecting infrastructure to be able to read and provide the analytics to utilities so they can manage the revenue. Sometimes you have utility employees that can't properly utilize the technology. So it's a whole ecosystem of things, and that's where we see additional opportunity. Not just rolling out our meters, but Conlog, for instance, can not only support their own meters, but they can support other meters, because there's 2 or 3 platforms, technology platforms for meters across the globe.
DC, we're going to have to leave it there, but I thank you for coming in. An 850 million rand deal for Durban. Consolidated Infrastructure Group's Chief Investment Officer, DC Moore, taking us through some of the finer details of the acquisition of Conlog. Once a big mess, today a focused manufacturer and distributor of electricity meters. There'll be more investments, more issues to shed light on next time here on the MoneyMakers. Until then, bye-bye.